The brand new Honda CR-V, this is a first look. That means interior and exterior details, but no driving yet. So let's get right into it. Much like many SUVs and CUVs, they've gotten bigger, much like we have in the American market. We want more for our money, and that's what the CR-V delivers, much like the updated or new HR-V. It's 2.7 inches longer. It's got a wider wider width, and it has a longer wheelbase. This is supposed to be moving a little bit more upmarket. So these changes in the platform are Honda's new architecture is supposed to make it more refined, less NVH noise and vibration in the cabin. It's supposed to ride better, and all these things that people keep asking for while still maintaining an affordable price point. And that's the point of these different trim levels as well. When you look at it overall, not only has it grown in size, but the platform is more rigid. It's 15% stiffer than the previous CR-V. Now on the outside, much like most of the Honda trim levels, you still have your EX, you have the Sport, and you can see the slight differences between the Sport model and the EX here. You have painted mirror caps on the EX, you have silver wheels, more traditional. On the Sport, you get blacked out accents. On the wheels, the mirror caps, you have the black badges on the back for the Sport, and of course, more traditional exhaust tips. Now, there are differences on the inside as well that I'm going to cover mostly. A lot of the exterior details you can just look at on a spec sheet, so let's take a look at the inside. Now that I've poked my way on the inside of the EX, you're going to see a few things. At first glance, this is a very monochromatic palette in here. You do have the gray seats, which kind of looks beige in certain light. You have black cloth, and then across the entire door panel is all matte, with the exception of this high contrast strip that is like this faux carbon fiber, and it's a nice accent. But the resounding thing about this interior is there's not a lot of bright works, there's not a lot of contrasting color across the dash, so it's gonna seem, like I said, monochromatic. That's not necessarily a bad thing on a utility type vehicle like this, and in some ways, because they've gotten rid of a lot of the black gloss that you see in the upper trims, it's better for it. So depends on, you know, if you like that or not. When you look at the door panels, everything is very sturdy, very hard plastic. There's tons of room in here to put things. It's easy to open the doors. The handles are enormous. There's no gimmicks in terms of electronics. There's no push button doors. In everything across the entire center plane of this dashboard, much like the Civic and HR-V we looked at, is very, very high quality, very clicky to use, and everything is physical. Everything. HVAC controls, your volume knob, tuning knob, and the lower trim levels, there is buttons for each one of the functions, even track selection, which is disappearing on a lot of cars. There are ample ports, even a 12 volt for an older legacy connection. You have USB-C and traditional USB, so it doesn't matter what phone you have, you're gonna be able to plug this in. On the lower trim levels, there's no wireless charger in here, but there's an anti-slip mat, so that's good. The cup holders are, again, you know, there's ample cup holder space in the door in the center area. The armrest is huge. I mean, it goes deep, way deeper than you expect. I almost lost my arm in there. And then, of course, like I said, even the shifter's traditional. There's no wacky gear selector. You're going to get in here, regardless of age, how long you've been driving, for 100 years, or if you're young, you're going to be like, okay, I know what I'm doing in here, and that's a huge pro. Now, in terms of the cloth seats, they're pretty grippy, and I can imagine these are great in the winter as well. And guess what? This still has seat heaters, which is great. Some people complain that that's something they want if you're in a cold climate. The power driver's seat seems to do a good job in terms of adjustability. You can get really low in here if you're a tall person, and then you can jam yourself up into the headliner if you're tall. Now, when you get into the back seat area, this is where you definitely feel like you have a lot of room. You feel like you're swimming back there. And there is a level of adjustment in terms of recline if you pull the lever back, and it reclines way more than I'd expect. And when you fold down the seats, much like the HR-V, there is this hinge design that allows the seats to go a little bit more flat, so you have a flatter load floor and it's not perfectly flat. And in the back, they allow you to adjust the rear cargo tray to go a little bit lower and deeper, which means it's going to help from keeping things from sliding around as much, which is really great and something that you're going to like, that flexibility in the back space. In terms of more room, with this growing in size, you get around 1.5 cubic feet of extra space compared to the previous generation, the internal combustion version. In the hybrid, you gain an extra 3 cubic feet. And it's around like 76 cubic feet total of space with all of the seats folded down. And it just looks and feels enormous in here, namely compared to the HR-V, which we were just out of. And this is exactly what you're looking for in an SUV of this space. The last thing to talk about is the door hinges. This is a big complaint about a lot of cars or SUVs, that the doors don't open all the way. In the back especially, they open so wide that you're never going to be struggling, one, to get like a car seat in there if you have a kid, or extra groceries and stuff you want to throw in the back seat. So it makes it easier to get in and out of this overall. Utility first. So let's talk about engines briefly. You only get the hybrid version on the top trim level, which adds 204 horsepower and 247 pounds of torque. That's out of a 2-liter, of course. This also adds the new dual motor, or 2 MGUs, for this hybrid system, which is much more traditional compared to what other manufacturers are doing now. There are some technical differences which we will cover in a future video of these engine layouts. They also offer a 1.5-liter turbocharged engine, and it has been slightly updated for this generation. Could be engine programming, it could be turbo changes. We don't know that yet, but really there's 2 options. And again, the hybrid is only offered in the upper trim levels. All-wheel drive is standard on the Sport Touring trim level and above, so you still have that option of getting front-wheel drive only if that tickles your fancy. Now, when you go into the upper trim level vehicles, that's where you see a bit of changes here. You get this pleather-like surfaces. While it is somewhat ventilated in terms of the seat cushion, so you don't just sweat yourself to death, the bolsters feel really meaty. The armrests are covered in the same material, the shift boot, and it feels a little bit elevated in terms of quality, and at least with the seat design. And the pro or con, depending on how you are, is this is where you add all of the gloss black. And in my approximation, it adds it in a lot of places that are very, very high glare in terms of the dashboard and the door design. Now, the benefit is it breaks up that monochromatic palette a bit by adding high contrast look and feel to this interior space. You also get the larger infotainment screen. It is a little bit faster acting, and the backup camera looks clearer to my eye. And of course, with the hybrid version, you get different readouts in the display to kind of tell you what's going on with the electric motors. But other than that, the core functionality and the core things about the lower and the upper trim levels carry over here. Size, space, comfort, and practicality. So it's a bit hard with limited amount of time to go over every nuance, and that's why we will get a press car and look at these in more in depth and talk about some of the technical advantages or disadvantages of the turbocharged engine versus the hybrid model. The overall impressions, this is a very mainstream product that's going to appeal to many people. With this generation, they are moving up market like many companies are and increasing the size. And I think the takeaway overall is they haven't done anything radically different here to ruin this vehicle. I think it's been updated in the right places, and I'm going to leave it to you to take a look and see if you like it compared to the competition. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next video.